We're here. Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
Yay.
It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. Playing on the Edge Radio is with Megan Edge. I'm Dr. Pat. I get to do this show with her. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Pat. How are you doing today?
Actually pretty good. And it's interesting because you and I were chit-chatting a little bit before the show. And I said something to you like, usually when my astrology friends and folks email me all about the moons and the cycles, I'm like excited about a new moon. This one, when I got this one, and I love the people I work with, they first, this time, gave me the news that you don't want to hear, but then they gave me the punchline. And so when I think about playing on the edge, that's literally kind of what we've been doing with Playing on the Edge. We've been presenting information. We've talked about some things that are really at some point a little controversial, but it's in order for us to present a case for people to find what they are seeking. And if they can't, then they can work with you. But when you're saying on the edge of everything, you have a very special meaning for today's show. And I think you should share how we got to it.
We had so much fun getting to this one. And I think we were actually on the call for about an hour and a half.
We were.
Looking at everything that's going on in the world right now and how impactful all of these events are globally. Even if you're not in the country where things are happening, it's still impactful because there's this ambient understanding and awareness that we have of all of it. And as we started looking at how could we encapsulate some of this, it became really evident to me that we weren't going to be able to do the show on just something or one thing about what's going on in the world right now. We really needed to look at everything and really go into a big picture understanding coming from the micro vision of what each of us is experiencing all the way out to the macro and what is going on, and start asking some questions that maybe we haven't touched on yet, along the lines of what is the spiritual meaning of this, for example? What is the bigger picture? Who's benefiting from the things that are happening on the planet today? And how are each of us navigating it and managing it and trying to stay sane in all of it?
Yeah.
And so really we're on the edge of everything right now.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the funniest thing happened in the last show, right? I always make sure when I'm doing these shows, especially like with you and Colette was on before, I change my internet. So I unplug from my cable, right, which is a coax cable, and I Wi-Fi to my fiber in the other room. And I forgot to do it. And I don't know, like 6-7 minutes into it, done. Everything's freezing. So it stopped. And then when I came back on, right, and I switched, my TV automatically came on. And on the TV was Joyce Meyer. Now, Joyce Meyer is known in the world for, fantastic storyteller, but she is a Christian leader. And she came on the TV. And I thought about this. She was talking about Philippians 4:11, right? And I had to look it up because whenever my TV comes on and I don't know where my remote control is, like it just came on. I had to stop. And so I thought about this, and I thought about, we're going to be talking about on the edge of everything. So on the edge of everything, playing on the edge, radical change with ease, Joyce Meyer, Philippians 4:11, 4:16, verse 7, how to be content. And I thought, thank you for that message.
Right.
Because what you're talking about is literally people feel like they are on the edge of everything.
I think every day that's what people are experiencing. And what I'm hearing back from clients now that I'm seeing clients again and friends and family is how exhausted we all are. And I think we talked about this last month as well. But truly, we're trying to navigate a whole new way of communicating with one another, and not just on these platforms like Zoom or Skype, but also in our day-to-day interactions, trying to figure out what are the protocols in one store to the other. Is it okay to stand 4 feet apart, or is it 6 feet, or is it 10 feet? Walking on proverbial eggshells. hoping that we're behaving appropriately and correctly for the whatever the current needs are, and then also watching as tempers are flaring. Frustrations are coming to the surface. We saw in that awful incident in France where a man ends up dying because he's a bus driver and he says, you have to wear your mask. That's what the new protocol is. And as we watch all of this happen, it impacts us on our own micro level. And so for you to receive a message today about contentment in such a very visceral way, it really does come down to this question of how are we doing? How are we managing at the individual level? We, as individuals, and when we look at what's going on in the world, we can often go to a place of feeling powerless, feeling very sad, feeling the grief that everyone's experiencing, feeling bewildered by what's happening. And so we start to seek an answer or answers that make sense to us.
I had to ask about this. And I had to ask about this in light of the bus driver. I had to ask about this. I asked both in a spiritual way, but I also asked some people I work with. I have a bunch of coaches, and at times I've come to you for help, and my God, an hour and a half on a call, don't you think we're talking about a few things? Yes. But there are some things to me, it doesn't matter how many years a person goes to school, there are just some things to me that bring tears to my eyes. Mm-hmm. And I ask a question that says, my mom used to tell us, we're better than this. This is what she used to say to us girls all the time. Mm-hmm. If something came up, she would say, you're better than that, Pat. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. Joyce, you're better than that. Doris, you're better than that. Don't join in. Don't react. Right. Don't sell drugs. You're better than that. And she would go off and talk about that. Mm-hmm. I start to wonder that on days where a bus driver, after asking of someone to wear a mask, I have to wonder how severe, Megan, being on the edge of everything really is. Now, I know astrologically, this new moon is going to come in as if we have an army stomping at us to keep moving, work harder, get through it all. I know that's what this moon is. But today, we've got to think about what's in our hearts so we can heal whatever being on the edge of everything is about.
Absolutely. And I feel that if we can allow ourselves to give purpose and meaning to the things that are happening around us and to us, and not just what's happening right now in the world and has been for the last 6 months, but in our entire lives. I was with a client the other day, and we were looking at how could she shift and release the heaviness that she was experiencing from a lifetime of doing things for other people and taking on other people's burdens and making them her own. And we came to this beautiful meditation of non-attachment that was created for her specifically in that moment. And it really taps into this Buddhist idea of not attaching ourselves emotionally to things in our surroundings, like the pebble we picked up from the beach or the vase that our grandmother gave us, or that favorite sweater, but also not attaching to the behaviors of other people, not taking them on as our own. But really what was so fascinating about this meditation as it came through for her is that when we look at our container, our backpack, whatever it is, our satchel that we think that we put everything in that we're carrying, that burden that we're carrying, equally in energy, there is value to the positive events that happen in our lives, and there is value to what we consider to be the negative events in our lives. And it's actually the same value. So for her, the exercise was to release all of it. All of it. So the traumatic experiences that she'd had in her life, equally to release the positive and uplifting experiences that she'd had in her life, to release the attachment that she had to them, and to release the idea that one was less than the other, that in fact they were all of equal value and none of them made her who she is. So in order for her to release the burdens she was carrying, she had to release all of it. it was so beautiful and so transformative. And as I was going through this with her, I was really sending that message out as far and as wide as I could energetically. Because what I'm seeing happening, especially with what's going on right now and the intensity with what people are experiencing in the world today, is that we are attaching energetically and emotionally to the experiences of others and making them our own. And on the one hand, compassion and empathy is a really beautiful experience to have for what someone else is going through. But where it becomes problematic for us is when we absorb their experiences and we carry it with us when it isn't ours to carry. So that release work is all around recognizing and acknowledging, like that awful incident that happened in France, to really feel in your heart for that family and for that man and for the community. And then to take that breath and step away from it, because you still have to live your life and you still have to show up for the people in your life. And so you can be in empathy with someone else and you can maintain your own energetic boundary so that you can take care of yourself and the people who are immediately in front of you. And so again, it comes back to that, the micro view of the individual and the macro view of what's happening in the world and how we can have a positive effect on that without taking on the burdens of the world, because that doesn't serve us, nor does that make us effective in the world.
You know, it's interesting too, Megan, and I want to talk to you about this when we come back, because we are talking about on the edge of everything, right? On the edge of guilty pleasures, conspiracy, on the edge. And the question really is, there is so much going on. Where do we want to put our energy? And then there are some things that our energy is drawn to for a reason, for a purpose. And, you know, I was struck by the widow of the bus driver in France. And, you know, I was struck by how succinctly she reflected the, let me just say, energy of millions of people around this. And what she said was shocking to me. When we come back, I want to share that. It was shocking, but in a strange way for me, I was right there with her. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back. This is Playing on the Edge. I'm Dr. Pat. I'm here with Megan. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, you know, what does this mean? Let's take a look at some of those guilty pleasures. What are they? You know, and is not wearing a mask one of them? Megan's going to talk about that one. I want to talk about something else. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Yep. We're back, Megan. Megan Edge. Megan, before we kind of talk about being on the edge of everything, right? On the edge of everything. And this really got born out of you and I spending 90 minutes talking about what should we talk about.
Talk about everything.
But we are on the edge of everything. And so when I say that, it's not on the edge of everything bad. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. We're on the edge of the next great idea. Yeah. You know, we're on the edge of people that are coming out. They're 13 or 14 years old and they're coming up with new ideas. We're on the edge of people figuring out how to help other people, right? You know, we're on the edge of new discoveries, right? We're on the edge of getting a custom mask that has a quote from Einstein on it. Really? I mean, I never thought I'd even say that. But before we continue, how do people, first of all, find out about what you're doing and how to work with you? All of the above.
You can find me all over the place. You can certainly go to our website, which is meganedge.ca. And we are in the midst right now of putting a new website together, which is very exciting, looking at a whole new look and a whole new direction, a lot more online programs that I'm going to be offering people. Nice. More self-directed, self-growth programs coming out of the teachings that I've done over the last dozen years or so, and also out of the programs that I run. So I've been pulling out modules from the big program, the year-long program that I have, and creating smaller bites that people can work with on their own. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. We also have a fabulous YouTube channel at Megan Edge Healing on YouTube. And there are a ton of videos and self-help and visualizations. All my workshops that I've ever held have all been recorded and are on there. So there's lots of materials and resources on the YouTube channel, and we would love for people to go there and subscribe and become part of our community that we're putting together, that we're creating out of all of these amazing teaching experiences and learning experiences.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Part of this is really what happens when we all step up in a sense, and we look at what's going on in the world, right? And we have to make a decision now. And these are the decisions. But really, when we're looking at projecting out front, there's a lot of things we are really on the edge of. Let's talk about what some of these things are, right? For you, what do we take for granted?
Well, I love what you just said about making decisions. And I think that this is where, for a lot of people, the exhaustion is coming from, is that we're having to make decisions throughout the day that we never had to make before. And we talk about taking for granted. Well, I used to take it for granted that I could walk into my grocery store and I could have my family with me if we all wanted to go grocery shopping together. And we could go up and down the aisles and we could spend as much time as we wanted to. And we didn't have to make a decision before walking into the store of whether or not it was necessary to put a mask on, or whether we were going to, like, what were we going to do if we ran into somebody we knew? Because initially, of course, we would give a hug. At least up here, we would do that. We were very huggy people up here. But now we have to make that conscious decision. Am I going to give this person a hug or am I not? Is it okay to give this person a hug or is it not? I'm going to ask them, are you hugging? Or am I going to ask them, are you okay? Are you healthy? Before I go in for the hug. There's all these decisions that we're having to make on a daily basis that we never had to make before. But it also comes down to choice and free will to a certain extent. The choices that we make, we're making them based on what we're being directed to for our own safety and to keep us as healthy as possible. I mean, that's where these directives are coming from. It's the intention for us to be safe. So we are paying attention to that. And then at the individual level, at least up here, we still have the choice whether, for example, we were talking about the masks before we went to break, whether or not we're going to wear a mask. Like if you go into the shops up here, many stores have a signs up that say it's highly recommended, but it's not law. So you can't say you're not welcome in our store if you're not wearing a mask. Up here, the decision is still being given to the individual. And so you get lots of people, yes, wearing masks and lots of people not wearing masks for a variety of reasons. But if you told me 6 months ago we were going to be having a conversation about whether or not I should be wearing a mask and what kind of mask I should be wearing and where I should be wearing it, I wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about. And now it's becoming about, to a certain extent, some of the shaming that we're seeing going on, some of the citizens on patrol, citizens watching other citizens, and there's the judging, and then there's the expectation, and there's all of that, and it becomes a lot to deal with in a day. And then, like you said, what about all the amazing things that are happening? What about all the innovations, the inventions, the entrepreneurial spirit that we're seeing people engaging in? It's really quite extraordinary that we are able to, yes, we can see all the really difficult things that are happening and the painful things that are happening. And we can also turn our attention to who are the heroes. And we talked about that in one of our recent episodes. Who are the individuals who are stepping up and stepping out and showing up in a different way? So they're on the edge of something else. They're on the edge of innovation. They're on the edge of new ideas or new behaviors or new ways of being of service, which is really quite remarkable.
Yeah. My dad used to tell a story whenever I could get him to sit down long enough to tell this story. We hardly ever saw my dad. And I remember my uncles coming over, my Uncle Al, my Aunt Frances, that side, my dad's side of the family, all coming over, and I remember them getting into a conversation, and my Aunt Frances and my Aunt Frances and her husband were military. They served. They were in World War II. My Uncle Al, Uncle Ralph, I called him, military, right? And I remember this conversation with them, and kind of my dad did not serve, right? And I remember this conversation from when I was young, right? I must have been a teenager. But the punchline to the conversation was talking about a time in their lives where they felt on the edge of everything. Now, they didn't say that. We're saying that.
Right.
But when I hear them talk about it, and I hear them talk about, yeah, that's why I married your aunt, because I didn't know if I was going to come home. I mean, they had a funny way to do it.
Yeah.
But when I got older and I would talk to them about that experience, especially my uncle, he really couldn't talk about what the real edge was. And I think what we are doing now is we have so many people having so many different experiences. And, it's like they say, who can I talk with? What can I do? Who can I talk with that will actually listen to me? And this is really the service that you provide in helping people, because sometimes they just want to be witnessed. They don't want us to fix them, right?
Yeah.
They want us to be able to say the best and the worst, right?
Yeah.
But we have something else going on that you talk about. There is a lot of shaming going on. And you got to help me understand that little guilty pleasure there.
Well, that's interesting that we could see that as a guilty pleasure. Perhaps for some people it is. It's interesting. I just started to reread the Celestine Prophecy. Do you remember that wonderful book?
Yes.
I have read it, I don't even know how many times, 12 times, 15 times. And just the other day, I picked it up again and thought, okay, time to read it again. Let's just see where this is coming from. And one of the insights, I think it's the third insight, is about power and control and the dynamics within relationships. Not only relationships between individual people, but relationships between governments, relationships between countries, and asking that very question, what is the pleasure that some people derive from being in charge or being in control, or using tactics like shaming to moderate behavior around them? What is the energetics that they receive from that? And from the perspective of that particular story and this idea of energy, it's really about the person who is in control and in charge is pulling energy from the person that they are shaming or manipulating or making feel small. And that's how they feed themselves, because they don't have an internal compass that guides them to their own sense of self. So they feel like they have to get it from others. And it's learned behavior. This is what the theory is, that it's, and psychology talks about this too. It's a learned behavior. It comes from family of origin. It comes from the tribal understanding of belonging and inclusiveness and us and them and otherness and oneness, and how that religion or how that culture sees these concepts and then demonstrates them at the home front. And then each person, each generation takes it out into the world and either repeats the old patterns or breaks away from the old patterns and goes somewhere else, has an awakening or a moment of, I don't think I like this. I don't like how it feels when it's done to me. And I don't want to be doing it to somebody else.
Yeah.
We had an experience up here. We're on Main Island right now.
Yeah.
At the very beginning of all of this, there were two experiences. One was the very first time I went into the grocery store, just as this, like 2 weeks after the shutdown or whatever it was. And I didn't know what the rules were. Nobody knew what the rules were. There weren't really any rules yet. And one of the cashiers just tore a strip off me because I stood too close to the counter. And she kept pushing me back, like not physically, but energetically pushing me back, like step back, step back. And she was angry. And I was totally confused. What is it I'm supposed to be doing? And she said, there's a sign, read the sign. Well, the sign is flat on the counter and I'm standing up. I can't see the sign. And I finally, I got out of there and I was shaking. I was like, I don't know what just happened, but I just did something wrong. And I didn't even realize I was doing it wrong. And in that moment, she was shaming me for my behavior when there was no protocol yet in place. And I reflected on that experience and thought, okay, but this is probably how she usually is with people. This isn't special to me. It's nothing I did in particular. It's not personal. This is actually who she was before this all happened. And that part of her personality has been accelerated by the ambient anxiety that we're all experiencing.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Yeah. And then the second incident was a culture, like a community shaming on the Facebook page. That one person in the community decided to use that platform to be very vocal about behaviors he saw that he felt were inappropriate at the time. This is week 3 and we were all outside. Anyways, I won't go into all the details about it, but there was these 2 very clear examples of public shaming or community shaming for behaviors that nobody even knew we were supposed to be doing yet. I mean, it was so early on in all of this. These same individuals probably haven't changed much in the last 6 months. They're likely still engaging in that behavior. The thing about it is, I get to choose how I respond to that. So having had those 2 experiences, I recognize, well, I sure didn't like how that felt. So I'm going to prepare myself for how do I want to respond the next time something like that happens.
Yeah.
Because it will happen again.
We were just talking about it this morning. And, there's an expression that I've used. I know when the 4 horsemen are going to show up in my personality and my attitude. I know when they're going to show up, when, that part of who those 4 horsemen are. We've seen images of the 4 horsemen, but when they start to show up in my personality, and, I've had to learn a few tools along the way, and especially today. And it's funny because myself, Jessica, and Linda were talking about this. And I said, I have a personal observation to share with you. And I said, I forgot that if I can catch what I'm about to feel, if I can catch it at that point and go to my quick go-to, which for me, it's thank you, God. When I start to feel that, I don't care what it is. That's me. Thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Goddess. Whatever that is, I go to the energy of that to stop it, because gratitude and fear cannot coexist. And I tried to prove that wrong over my lifetime. But if we don't have that tool, and I'm not perfect, if I don't use a tool, and I know you've got a bag of them, but if I don't use it, by the time I get to 3 seconds into it, I'm already now into a story of it.
Right.
And if I by the time I get to 6 seconds of it, I'm already now creating an entire scenario about it. And if I get to 17 seconds, I have now learned a new way for my fear to rule my life. And I just feel for now that this show that we decided to do on the edge of everything, when we come back, is to say, this is not about telling people what to feel or not feel or what's right or what's wrong, but how much of your energy and power would you like to give away for a future consequence that may devastate you and change your life? Whether you're the bus driver or the 4 people that brutally attacked them, everybody's life is changed, not for the better. What can we do so that if you are on the edge of everything, you know how to go from that everything to something that will get you to a place of contentment and joy or not? And when we come back, That's the journey Megan Edge is going to take us on, everybody. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. I mean, so I always like to think about, like, how do I determine my mood, Benny? And so one of the things that I find gives me a little insight into like what I'm feeling, that I don't express myself because I didn't grow up like in a place where they say, oh, honey, how you feeling today? No, it wasn't that. But there's always something that happens to me when I have a sense of what I'm feeling. But before I get to that, I want to know, Megan, about the work that you're doing, what you have put together to help people on the edge all over the world, because they can work from you with you from everywhere.
Oh, they absolutely can. And we have this beautiful thing called Zoom or Skype or Messenger, or, it's all over the place. We have so many ways of connecting with one another now, which is just fabulous. It's so great that we can reach out and be in connection with one another. So certainly people can work with me remotely. They can go to my website. There's a little button that says contact me, and they can send me an email, and I will be happy to work with people. Some of the work that the work that I've been doing all along is teaching. I love, love, love teaching. When I find something that's interesting, something that I've learned, a technique, a way of thinking, a belief system, and I feel that it has value or it's made an impact to me, or I see the impact it has on a client, I want to share it with people. And I want to share it with people for two reasons, Pat. One is that I know the world needs healers, and that's I call my capital H, healers. We need people who are willing to step into being that person who can be of service, and that can be their work in the world. But also because I want people to feel empowered. And at this point in time, especially, I'm seeing it all around me. There's so many people feeling disempowered, feeling helpless, feeling that there isn't anything they can do to make a difference. And they're getting triggered into their own issues of worthiness and deserving and self-esteem and self-worth. When I can help someone see their value, experience their own value, feel their own value in their body and in their sense of self, when I can help someone see that the events in their lives have purpose and meaning. And when you said, it was something you said just before we went to break, not for the better, about the experiences that some people are having. I immediately had a reaction to that, which is, no, but wait. Everything has value and purpose. And even though in the moment it might not feel like there's value to what's happening, or it may feel like this is the worst thing ever and there could never possibly be any good that comes from it. Yeah. There is and there can be. And for me, that's part of the healing process. That's part of the healing journey, is when we get to a place where we can sit down and say, all right, that was awful. However, what did I learn? How did I grow? How was I out of my comfort zone? Where was the pain? And what can I now do with this new learning or this knowing that I have that could make a difference for somebody else? Right? And that's the whole piece about being in service. Yeah. So when we talked about that we're calling it this awful incident in France, because it is awful what happened. But a consequence of that is that action happened. And we're seeing this all over the world. Yep. Right? There's these moments of awfulness. There was that old Japanese man who was beaten up right at the very beginning of all of this, somewhere in the US. I'm not sure where it was.
Well, we almost forgot about that, didn't we?
Right? These things, they've been going on since the very beginning of all of this. They've been going on since before that. But in response to COVID and all of this, people have been misbehaving in this way. So what the consequence of this is that other people see this and say, enough already. Are you kidding me with this behavior? No, we're better than that. Like your stepmom used to say, all right? We are better than that. We don't have to participate in that kind of behavior. But more than that, we can have a voice, and we can slam our hand down on the table and say, stop it. What are you doing? This is ridiculous behavior. And that may sound like shaming, but that's not actually the intention. The intention is to snap people out of this condition that they've gotten into, and start to open up their eyes and look around and see this is something that's happening to everyone.
Yeah, that's what the wife, the widow, that's what I said earlier. That's what the widow did. But, you know, I'm chuckling a little bit because Linda, myself, and Jessica have had a little, we've been having a little conversation going on. And I want to talk about it because it is, it's funny, but it's exactly, I mean, clearly we were talking earlier about something not even related to this show, wasn't it? And, you know, sometimes it's hard to confront others. It really is. There's some personalities and people that can say, you know, Megan, I just got to tell you, okay, from now on, every show we do, we're going to wear a mask. Actually, that's a different conversation, but it is something I'm thinking about for my Power Up show. I could do that. But part of it is you get two people together, they're going to have two different opinions. Great. So we have two different opinions. Can we agree to disagree? Yes or no? Well, not now, because we are on the edge of everything. We're not going to agree to disagree. So it's funny because we were talking about something really important. And Jessica sends me in my Zoom, she sends me and Linda, in my Skype rather, because sometimes we can't talk on the phone. Everybody's like, but she sends a little picture. And the little picture is about sometimes when you're digging a hole, you just stop digging. All right, then that starts it, right? So then I come back and I said, yeah, I love that. So part of what you're saying is like the definition of insanity, right? Which is keep doing what you're doing over and over and over again and expecting a different result, right? And so to me, that is, yeah, let me keep going out in public and hanging around people that I'm not sure where they are in their health journey. And let me keep doing that and thinking I'm not going to get something or something not going to happen. I could keep doing that. So then, you know, Linda comes back and says, can't get grapefruit from a hardware store. Now, what does this have to do with anything? But this is a conversation about something that's actually really important to us. And then we go on and back and forth. And I'm like, okay, Linda, and I basically say, you can't get grapefruit. So Linda, in her beautiful Linda, says, what fun is that? Keep digging and let's see how far we can go and then dump everything into it and cover the hole.
Love you, Linda.
And I thought, wow.
So what happens?
I know how to do that.
If you dig the hole and you get all the way to the other side of the planet.
But I love that. Dig the hole. So Jessica's saying stop digging.
Right.
I'm saying something totally not even related to the hole. Linda comes back and say, why do that? Why stop digging? That's no fun. Let's keep digging. Take all of our you know what, throw it in the hole and cover it up. But boy, see, I think that's so at some level what's happening, because honestly, emotionally, physically, mentally, what is that line? We can't handle the truth right now. It's hard. Yeah. It's the truth. When I read a study yesterday from I read research studies. Why? Oh my God. Yeah. My friend said, get a life, Pat. Are you really reading that stuff? But I read this study and I thought, wow, is that it? Some days I want you to dig the hole and throw me in it and just cover that up. Let me breathe through a little straw. Because being on the edge of everything can feel very uncomfortable. But you have a solution and I have a solution. Let's talk about that solution if we could.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think there's more than one solution to any of this. I mean, if you go online, you'll find lots of people that are giving lots of really great advice. They're saying, take up meditation or coloring. Have you seen the coloring for COVID coloring books that are out now?
Yeah.
They're really irreverent. I love them.
They're cool.
We could go into irreverence. There's another wonderful solution. Like, okay, yes, this is heavy stuff. Absolutely, 100% it is. And people are dying, and that's awful. And in no way am I mitigating that by saying we also need to take a breath and remember to stop taking ourselves so seriously, because humor still has a place in the world. Laughter still has a place in the world. Giving a hug actually does still have a place in the world. And we can be a little bit irreverent and still not be disrespectful. Action. You see something you don't like, what are you going to do about it? But conscious action with intention. So what keeps coming into my mind, coming back to story, when I see people driving in their cars and they've got their gloves on and they've got their masks on and there's no one else in the car with them and it's their car. Why? There is zero risk to you in your car. You don't need to be wearing your mask. And in fact, it's not healthy to wear your mask all day long because you're just recirculating your own breath, and that's not good for your lungs. But that notwithstanding, I might go in that moment of being a little bit judgy and just owning that and going, And then I also know that that is helping that person feel safer. That's all it is. It's a coping mechanism. Practically speaking, when you're out in the world and you're interacting with people, there's a purpose in wearing your mask, for sure. In your own home, when it's just you, but if it makes you feel better, it's like a security blanket. All right. So what are the things that you could do to help yourself feel safer? And if it's hand sanitizing all day long, or it's wearing your mask all day long, awesome. Not my place to make a comment on you in your car with your mask on. Although I might think it up here, I won't, I wouldn't bother with it.
No.
Because I'm sure there's things I'm doing that people are looking at me and go, wait, what? Why, what are you doing? So there's these little things that we can do throughout our day to help us to feel like we have some sense of control. We have some way of being okay in our space. Whatever that's like.
I was talking to somebody with, there was a couple of young kids, and I was walking my friend's dog, and we're walking around, and we just stopped 6 feet, chit chat. And they were asking me, what do we hear people are doing? I said, I don't know. But I said, I found something interesting. And I said, I was looking at some snorkel masks online. And I said, they're really cool, right? They cover your whole deal. And they have a breathing thing, which you can actually put something in that will screen out, right, in their little breathing compartment. And I said, the other thing I noticed about them is snorkel masks, they have these things at the top, but the air doesn't come in and out in the same way. They have like a double tube. And I'm telling her, and I'm talking to her, and I'm saying, I thought this was a really good idea. And I said, you can buy this stuff that will filter your air coming in and out. Have these dogs. Next day, walking around, run into them again. And she said to me, my daughter loved your idea. She said, thanks to you, I had to buy my daughter a $70 snorkel mask. And I said, oh, she said, yeah. She said, I could not get my daughter to wear a mask, like the white mask. Said, but I can't get this snorkel mask off of her. And I thought, if that's going to work, if that's what you're going to do. And then the mom went on to say, if they go back to school, they have to wear masks. And I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't have any children going to school, so I don't know the rules. And I said, oh, yeah. She said, my daughter wants to wear the snorkel mask. And I'm holding my breath. And she looked at me and she said, do you mind? You do a radio show, right? Do you mind writing a note for the principal so my child can wear the snorkel mask? And I just thought, this is like the coolest conversation I have had about this since it started.
Right.
Day 3, I'm walking the dogs, their last dog walk. I don't run into them directly, but I can see them. She's got the mask on. And I thought, I started to feel a little odd about it because did I do something wrong? And you know what it reminds me of? We have to be creative here. This is like how Mama got me to eat broccoli.
Right.
Um, but it's a little humor in the middle of a big pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that reminds me, I wanted to share this with you and who's ever watching us. Okay, so this is, you'll notice on the fedora that I just put on, there are pink flamingos.
I love that.
Can you see them? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
And then I have my pink flamingo on my water glass.
Oh, very nice. Wow, you're like matchy.
Totally matchy. We love pink flamingos. We have a whole pink flamingo theme up
Do you
here.
have a pink flamingo mask?
Well, no, not yet.
Because that's what I've got to see. I've got to see the pink flamingo, like with the little tail. I got pink flamingos outside. But here we are, right? This is the part of living on the edge of everything, or being on the edge of everything, is this question. And man, this hit me hard, and Linda and Jessica get the brunt of this. Does it feel safe to question the status quo? So when I talk to them, I say something like, I have got to do something different with the Power Up show. We've got to do this, this, and this. And so you don't always get the big hug, like, yeah, go team, go team. They're like, why? And then it's hard to explain, but how does that feel to you? And what does it mean here as we wrap this up and talk about what's really going on the edge?
Well, one of the places I wanted to land on and possibly leave us with is this concept of fear. Because that's what's fueling most of the behaviors that we're seeing right now, and most of the decision-making process. And not all of it's rational. And when we talk about what can we question or what can we not question, is it okay to have an opinion that is contrary to the other person's opinion or the cultural opinion or whatever that is? If we're fearful of expressing ourselves in a respectful manner, then we're shutting ourselves down, first of all. But secondly, fear can be your ally. And what I teach my students and my clients is find out what your fear is, and then let's ask your fear a really important question, which is, why are you here? And what do you have for me to work with? Right? If the fear is getting sick, then why? What is it about getting sick that is so fearful, that is bringing up fear for you? You ask the question from a place of curiosity. In fact, that would be what I would want to leave everybody with today. As you go through and you're on the edge of everything, and you see the things that are happening in the world, and you're having your own triggers and responses to it, step back, count to 3, and get curious. Why am I fearful? What is it that I'm afraid of? Why am I afraid of it? I'm asking from a place of curiosity, not from self-judgment, right? Not from self-recrimination or anything like that, but from a place of curiosity. Because once you get curious, you can start to hear and listen to the answers that are showing up for you. And once you have your answers, you can move out of the fear because it's no longer serving you. You can move into something else. The fear has a place. It has a reason for being. It's a part of who you are, and it's trying to tell you something. So instead of reacting to the fear with like a knee-jerk reaction, sit with it, feel it in your body, and then get curious about it. This perhaps is that solution that you were asking about a few minutes ago that we were just talking about. What would be my solution? Yeah. Get curious about your fear and ask it what it is and how it's serving you, and then decide if you still need it. And perhaps you can move through it and past it and show up in the world in a different way.
Yeah, I have to tell you, you really nailed it, because when I have done that at different points and times in my life, man, I'll tell you, it has led me to a whole new level in relationships. And sometimes it's you leave the relationship. But what a great bit of advice. Megan, please give out your website again and let people know how they can work with you directly, all of the above.
I'm at meganedge.ca. You can get a hold of me. Email is the best way to reach me. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn under Megan Edge Healing. I'm on Facebook. It's Megan Edge. And then my business page is Megan Edge Healing, and YouTube, Megan Edge Healing. Pretty much put in Megan Edge Healing and you will find me. And I would look really forward to connecting with you and seeing how I can be of service.
I love it. Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. I'm looking forward to the new website too. That'll be fun.
I'll let you know when it's up and running.
All right, you bet. Megan Edge, everybody. This is living on the edge of, or playing on the edge of everything this month. Next month, I wonder what we will be talking about. All right, everybody, let's take a short break. More on Transformation Talk Radio coming up right now.